I'm coming from PTAs, and as a parent, you want the best education for your child, especially if you come from education or you had a decent education. And I would say I had a pretty decent education, not just because I went to private schools, but teachers who actually had a little leeway and freedom of the curriculum, and it wasn't demanding. It wasn't, because what people don't realize is the reason why the DOE and charter schools too, and I'm going to talk about them too in this video. The reason why children, a lot of people say, oh, these kids, who's running the world right now? Millennials. So if the kids is fucked up, it's because we fucked up. Like, literally, the school system across the board, I don't care if your child goes to charter school, whatever, it's fucked up. And if you don't believe me, look at your child's homework. Look at how they write. They don't even teach the kids grammar anymore. Now, not to put my son on blast, but his writing is, I've been telling them for years, and I've been telling him for years. I try to help him with his writing. He says, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not a teacher. Right? He's like, Mom, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not a teacher. I try to teach him how to write script. He says, they don't teach us that in school, Ma. So he has no interest in it. Right? I got a world history textbook from the school I work at. He doesn't want to read it. Right? Why? Because the things that they're teaching him in his school, that's all he care about. He doesn't want to learn other things. That's his personality. So I cannot change that. Me, I'm not like that. Like, I'm a brain sponge. I like to learn. If a person know more than me, I'm gonna listen. Right? That's just me. But my son has a different personality, and due to that personality, I don't feel like college is for him, because you cannot be like that in college. You have to be, now college don't really teach you nothing either, but you can't be like that. And he's very stubborn, and there's a lot of kids like that too. But I started noticing things like when he was in elementary school. The reason why did I put my child in charter school? Let me tell y'all, I live in Brownsville, which is the worst neighborhood in New York City. It's not one of, it is statistically, and I not only live here, I've worked here. It is, as far as school system and a livelihood, the crime and everything, it is the worst in New York City, right? So you have to understand, I can't put my child, I didn't have options, right? So when you are a mother or a parent living in East New York, Brownsville, certain parts of Crown Heights, your choices of your child's education is very limited, right? So I tried the public school thing for my son, right? It didn't work out. Somebody actually bit his hand, right? And I didn't like how the teachers handled it. Years later, they started bringing knives to school. So that's not something I would want for my son, right? So I got in the house, took me a shower. But yeah, I went to my son PCAs, and he got a 3.1 or whatever. But I am worried about my son because his writing is not all that good. And I try to work with him, and he doesn't want to hear it because he's like, Mom, you're not a teacher. He doesn't care that I'm an assistant teacher. He's like, you're not a teacher. So he feels like I don't know anything. I have my bachelor's. He still feels like I don't know anything. So as a parent, I'm helpless. What can I, it's like I can make him clean his room. I can make him, but when it comes to education, I can't really force it. That's something you have to want that, right? Parent, I could do for so much, but he has to want it. He feels like I don't know anything, and he's gonna listen to his teachers, and that's what it is. There's nothing I can do, and it's unfortunate. But You know, a school that I used to work at, a teacher was written up because a student was sleeping in class, basically implying that it's her fault. When you don't know what that student did the night before, that's insanity. And when you go to college, guess what? You fall asleep in class and you fail, that's on you. Like, that's on you. And there's no going to the dean, especially if it's a private school, because my school, I went to Mercy College. I had failed the class online. I had to retake it, and I made sure I took it in person. But, you know, the person failed me because they claimed that they didn't see my test online, and I know I did it. So the dean was like, make sure you have your receipts. They're not going to do nothing about it, because with my school in particular, a lot of professors, they'll come out and say it too. They didn't get the job from a website or the internet. They got the job because that's their cousin's friend, or that's, it's an old friend that works there at the college that put them on. So you going to the dean is like, that's like going to their friend. So you think that, and that's why the system in itself with how we raising these kids in the school system is wrong. Like, they took grammar out the school. If you present a paper to a professor with bad grammar, in some cases, they'll hand it right back to you and you have to do it over. And sometimes you think your grammar is good. Take your ass to college English 2. That's when you realize how bad your grammar is. And you may think it's perfect, or even for some people, they got to the masters and the professor's telling them, like, this is not how you write a paper. And they're embarrassed, and I'm afraid of that, because I struggled. Listen, I'll be the first to admit, I struggled to get my bachelor's. It was not easy. I struggled, okay? Grammar is very hard. Yes, English is my first language, but I know how to speak properly. But with writing, it's very hard because everybody has their own opinion of grammar, to be honest. For example, when you put I should go to the store, right? Some people might say you're supposed to put I should have went to the store, or I should go to the store, or I should have went, simple things like that. Or I can't think right now, but there's just certain things that you may think sounds okay, but to the next person, to the professor, it doesn't sound right? Because they have a doctorate in that. They have a master's. You're just on the entry level. So certain things that sounds okay to us, may not sound okay to them. Just like I say, the women went on the train. Somebody else might say, well, you need to specify how many women. The 3 women went on the train, right? Why I just can't say the women went on a train? But some people might argue, you need to put how many? The 3 women went on the train, right? Or you're not supposed to put could not, right? I had a professor that she was like, why are we putting unnecessary letters? You're supposed to put couldn't with an apostrophe T. But to me, what's the difference? What's the big deal? I could not go to the store, right? Some professors are very technical and you're supposed to put N apostrophe T. I couldn't go to the store. Very technical, very extra, I feel like. So, and there's a lot of bad grammar in books. If you guys read a lot, I see bad grammar. Almost every book I've ever read was bad grammar. Even if it's like a thick book, even if it's a history book, it's bad grammar. most books have some type of bad grammar in it because nobody's perfect. I haven't read a perfect book yet. I haven't. None of us are perfect in grammar. That's why it's funny to me. I feel like grammar is something like a resume. You know, you have your way of writing a resume, and then somebody might look at it and say it's wrong. You're not supposed to put it like that. As long as you put important bullet points, dates, times, and where you worked, that's all that matters. And put it into one page. That's it. You know, but to each their own, you know. The main thing in life is to be clear and concise. But yeah, just in general, like, so yeah, I was talking about my son's elementary school. So when he was in elementary school, I noticed that he did not have science or social studies. And they said they have something called the Common Core. The Common Core was introduced years ago, and it makes no sense because a lot of the kids of today are missing the basics of science and social studies. Then when they get into high school, they get in the bare minimum, right? Then when they get into charter school, it's even worse because apparently they don't have money for things, or I don't know what's going on. But like I said, the school I work at now, the kids are doing experiments in the class. My son is doing chemistry and they're not doing any experiments. You cannot teach chemistry without doing experiments. It just is not going to work like that. You have to do something hands-on. Science is very boring. I don't care what nobody says. Science is boring. It's very boring. Like, I worked at so many schools. I've been in school myself. I had a professor, because I took living environment when I was in college. I didn't take it in high school. In high school, I took biology. They say it's the same thing, but whatever. But I took living environment in college, and I'll never forget the professor. You could tell he had a cool personality because before he started teaching, he would just talk to us. And he was very funny. I kid you not, when he started teaching, we all fell asleep. And you know what he told us? I'm very sorry. Like, he apologized to us. And I felt bad. I'm like, no, it ain't you. It's this book. He's like, yeah, I know, guys, you know. But you could tell in real life he was fun. And he used to come an hour late because Mercy College is like this. So when you're a professor at Mercy College, you have to work at 2 campuses. They don't care if you have a car or not. This particular professor, he ain't have no car. So he would come from Dobbs Ferry to Manhattan campus, and he used to be an hour late for our class, like every class. But we understood because he was nice, you know. And for most people, they was happy because it's like, oh, snap. So I don't, you know, babysitter, whatever they had going on, they was like, oh, cool. You gonna be an hour late? Cool. You know, he's like, yes, I'm gonna be an hour late. I'm coming from Dobbs Ferry. I don't have a car or whatever. And years later, I went through the same struggle. I had a class in Dobbs Ferry in the morning, and in the afternoon, I had a class in Manhattan. And that professor in Manhattan was strict. He was like, you better be on time. So I experienced it, and it's no joke. But I'll never forget, his personality was so bubbly and so fun. He used to crack jokes, and it was cool. He never would just go into the lecture. He would always be like, this happened to me today. You know, this is what happened to me on the train. Or, you know, he will always talk about normal life before going into the lecture. And that kind of set the tone. That set the mood. Because you're already an hour late, right? You don't want to come off as a snob to your students. So he eased his way into the lecture. But no matter how hard, he really did try. It was so boring. Then I had a science teacher in high school. Again, he's not a boring person. he used to talk about his life too. And also, he was a minister because I went to a Christian school. So he was in charge he was in charge of the chapels. Chapel, for those of y'all know, chapel is when it's just like church. So my school was very open-minded. So like the kids that weren't Christian, they didn't have to come that day. And it was like, if you want to come, you can come. And we only had it once a month because it would literally come from 11 a.m. to 3 o'clock. Like, we literally had church, y'all. Like, and it was always enjoyable. And even my friends that didn't go to church enjoyed chapel and they looked forward to it. I mean, this man had an anointing. I can't explain. I don't know what else to call it. When you could get heathens and, you know, even, because like my school was, you had Muslims in there, you had atheists. I had a friend who, what they call the seven hands, he had that in his house, Krishna. You had children from all walks of life listening to this man when it was chapel time, and they enjoyed it. So he definitely had that anointing, where when he talked, people listened in the sanctuary. And then in the classroom, I knew it wasn't like math. I had troubles with math. It wasn't him. It's just me and math just don't get along. And then with science, I loved biology. I love biology. Now, we didn't do no experiments because my school was bootleg, but it was interesting. Earth science, my school was small, so the same teacher who taught biology, he taught earth science. I kid you not. Earth science was boring. Oh my God, I hated that subject. I think earth science and living environment is very similar. It's boring. I don't care who teaches it. Like I said, the same man in my high school who taught biology, he also taught earth science, and it was boring. Like, I just couldn't get into it. And then chemistry was okay. I could tolerate chemistry. And physics was quite interesting. I liked physics. I feel like 12th grade was my most interesting year. I didn't have any regents. I passed everything, and I was preparing for college. And the subjects I had was relative, I felt like. Pre-calculus was hard. I don't know what that was. That was like Chinese. But I had physics. I had economics. Economics was really good because we had the best. We had a real estate agent teaching us economics. So that was like wonderful. So yeah, when it comes to that, people want to blame the teacher, but it's not always the teacher. Sometimes it could be the student, because I can admit, you know, like, people love Psych 101. I had Psych 101. It was boring. It made me not want to major in psychology because I couldn't tell. I'm like, oh my God. All of this is freaking opinions, bro. Like, people really dig deep into psychology. And even when you go to therapy, I'm not knocking therapy, but a lot of that stuff that people say, it's their opinion. You know how many people are misdiagnosed and the person got a master's, PhD, and everything else, and they still can't, diagnose them properly, But yeah, getting back to like my son's elementary school, it was safe. So like I said before, I don't live in a good neighborhood. I live in Brownsville. So basically my only option is a strict charter school or a ratchet public school where the teachers can't even hear themselves talk because the kids' behaviors are so bad. And I know because I've worked in all of the schools in Brownsville, just about, and none of them are good. And the ones that are decent, like as far as like teachers and stuff, you got kids that are not receptive. So why would I want my son in that environment, right? So when you live in a neighborhood like mine, we don't have a choice but to put them in charter school. But then the charter school don't really prepare them either, because I can admit that my son's grammar is I feel like my son's grammar is like on a junior high school level. His reading level, thank God, is on level, right? But his grammar could be better, and a lot of things they're not teaching. They took out of the curriculum. My son didn't know who Cleopatra was. They took that out. My son didn't know about the Egyptian Empire. I taught him that. I'm teaching him that. I got the world history book from the school I work at. They don't use the textbooks, but this is what we have at hand. And my worry is like, is my son going to be ready for college, or is he going to be struggling? It's like, what parent wants to be going through that? Because he didn't get the basics from when he was supposed to. I was able to go through my struggles, and I achieved. I got my bachelor's, right? It was a little struggle, but it's like I had the basics. You know what I mean? I wrote papers in the 4th grade. How many of y'all remember book reports? They don't give the kids book reports, right? They don't have papers to do in high school anymore. How are you going to do that? And then when they get to college, they're not going to know how to do a paper. Like, they're going to be so lost. And then when you try to teach them at home, they don't want to listen to you. They feel like you don't know anything. You're not the teacher. It's very, very hard between technology, society. I don't even want to get into what's going on with that, with these trends and everything else. That's another issue too. But it's so hard to be a parent now with this education system. And it's like, if the public school and the charter school could just learn from each other and merge, it probably could be better, maybe. And those are my thoughts.